My name is Nicole, and I am 29 years old. I never imagined I would be telling a story like this, the kind that sounds dramatic when you hear it online, but feels painfully ordinary when you live inside it. My 6-year-old daughter and I lived in a shelter, sharing a narrow room with 2 metal-framed beds, a flickering fluorescent light, and a window that barely opened. Every morning began with the same ritual: folding donated blankets, smoothing out wrinkles in clothes that were never truly ours, and pretending for my daughter's sake that this was some temporary adventure rather than the collapse of everything I once called stable. I had grown up believing my parents were strict but fair, distant but dependable. When my marriage fell apart and financial strain swallowed me whole, they told me the same thing they always had: you need to learn to stand on your own feet. What they didn't tell me, what I couldn't have even guessed, was that there was something else, something hidden, something that would turn my entire understanding of my family upside down. The shelter became our world. The quiet hum of other broken lives behind thin walls, the forced politeness of communal kitchens, the way people avoided eye contact because everyone carried a story too heavy to share. My daughter adapted in the way only children can, finding magic in the smallest things, turning cardboard boxes into castles, smiling at strangers with a warmth I no longer possessed. I smiled back at her always, because she deserved at least one person who seemed unshaken. Then one afternoon, everything shifted. We were sitting in the common area, my daughter coloring with dull crayons, when a woman stopped in front of us, elegant, perfectly dressed, completely out of place. My heart nearly stopped when I recognized her. My wealthy grandmother, a woman whose presence had always been rare, almost mythical in my life. She stared at me, then at my daughter, confusion clouding her face. "Nicole?" she asked, as if unsure whether she was seeing a ghost. I stood too quickly, embarrassment and disbelief colliding inside me. Before I could explain anything, before I could construct some protective lie, she asked the question that would echo in my mind for days. "Why aren't you living in your house on Hawthorne Street?" The words didn't make sense. They didn't belong to my reality. I felt the ground tilt beneath me. "What house?" I asked, genuinely, helplessly. She frowned, as if I were the one speaking nonsense. "Your house. Your parents told me it was set aside for you years ago." I remember the exact sensation of that moment. Not anger. Not yet, but a cold, creeping disbelief. Like stepping into water you thought was shallow, only to realize there is no bottom. My grandmother's confusion slowly turned into something else. Something sharper, something that made my stomach twist. She left soon after, her expression troubled, my mind spinning in chaos. That night, sleep was impossible. Hawthorne Street, a house. Set aside for me. My parents had never mentioned anything remotely like it. 3 days later, driven by a mixture of dread and desperate curiosity, I did something I hadn't done in years. I showed up unannounced at a family event. The house was full of familiar laughter, the clinking of glasses, the comfortable noise of people who had never known instability. For a brief second, standing at the doorway, I almost turned back. Then my mother saw me. The color drained from her face so quickly it was as if someone had pulled a switch. My father's smile froze, his eyes widening in a way I had never seen before. The room's warmth evaporated. Conversations faltered. And in that thick, suffocating silence, I realized something with terrifying clarity. They knew exactly why I was there, and whatever waited behind their pale expressions was going to change everything. In that suffocating silence, with every pair of eyes in the room fixed on me as though I had shattered something invisible the moment I stepped inside. No one rushed forward. No one smiled. My parents just stood there, pale and rigid, their carefully constructed world visibly cracking. I could feel my heart pounding, but beneath the fear was something stronger now, a sharp, steady anger that had been building ever since my grandmother's question. "Hawthorne Street, a house." My house, apparently. "We need to talk," I said, my voice trembling only slightly. The words sounded small compared to the weight of everything hanging in the air, yet they landed like a thunderclap. My mother was the first to react, forcing a laugh that didn't fool anyone. "Nicole, this isn't the time," she said too quickly, her eyes darting around the room. My father's jaw tightened. Not here, he added, his tone low and controlled, the same tone he used whenever he wanted to assert authority without raising his voice. But I had spent too many nights swallowing humiliation, too many mornings pretending stability for my daughter. I wasn't leaving. Why aren't you living in your house on Hawthorne Street? I asked, repeating my grandmother's exact words. The effect was immediate and devastating. My mother's face lost what little color it had regained. My father's eyes hardened, but behind the stern expression I saw it. Panic. The room erupted into murmurs. Relatives shifted uncomfortably, sensing drama yet clearly unaware of the truth. Nicole, my mother whispered, a warning wrapped in my name. What house? I continued, my voice stronger now. The confusion I had felt days ago replaced by a demand for answers. Because I lived in a shelter. Your granddaughter lived in a shelter. While you... I stopped, the realization hitting me with brutal force. While you what? My father exhaled slowly, the way people do when they know a lie has reached its end. Let's step outside, he said. This time it wasn't a suggestion. It was surrender disguised as control. We moved to the quiet of the hallway, but the distance from the crowd did nothing to soften the truth waiting to surface. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then my mother began to cry. Soft, practiced tears that might once have disarmed me. Not anymore. We did it for your own good, she said. The words collapsing under their own absurdity. I stared at her, disbelief burning through me. My father finally spoke, his voice strained. The house on Hawthorne Street was left by your grandmother years ago. It was meant for you. The sentence rang in my ears. Meant for you. But, I demanded, already knowing there was more. He looked away. We rented it out. The world seemed to narrow into a single, unbearable point. You what? My voice broke, not from weakness, but from the sheer magnitude of betrayal. My mother sobbed harder. You were young. Irresponsible. We thought it would teach you independence. Independence. The word felt like a cruel joke. So you let your daughter live in a shelter, I said, each word slow and deliberate. While you collected rent from a house that was mine, neither of them could meet my eyes now. My father's silence was answer enough. The pieces locked into place with sickening clarity. The lectures about self-reliance, the cold refusals for help, the way every struggle had been framed as my personal failure, all while they withheld the one thing that could have prevented everything. Rage surged through me. But deeper than rage was something colder and more permanent. Detachment, the kind that arrives when trust dies completely. Do you have any idea what that shelter was like for her? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The nights she asked when we were going home? The mornings she pretended it was a game so I wouldn't cry? My mother collapsed against the wall, shaking. My father looked decades older in that instant, yet I felt no sympathy. Only clarity. They hadn't just made a financial decision. They had rewritten my reality, controlled my hardship, engineered my humiliation. And they had done it while smiling across dinner tables. This ends now, I said, surprising even myself with the calm in my tone. The lease. The rent, everything. My father nodded faintly, defeated. But there was one more truth waiting. Grandmother knows, I added. That finally made him flinch. Because we both understood what that meant. The consequences were no longer mine alone to carry. I walked away from that hallway lighter in a strange, painful way, as though a lifelong illusion had finally shattered. The betrayal hurt, but the truth had given me something far more valuable than the house ever could. Freedom from the guilt they had fed me for years. And if you've made it this far into my story, if you understand what it means to be underestimated, dismissed, or quietly wronged by the very people meant to protect you, then you already know why stories like mine matter. They remind us that truth has a way of surfacing, that silence is not the same as innocence, and that self-worth sometimes begins at the exact moment we stop accepting the narratives others impose on us. If this story moved you even a little, if you believe in resilience, justice, and the power of untold truths, consider subscribing to the channel, because some stories don't just deserve to be heard. They need to be remembered.